Tonight, we leave the modern world behind for the quiet of the Middle Ages. Close your eyes and listen. Backslash and backslash, and you are back in time, safe and warm. Let the story begin. Backslash and backslash, and you wake to the sound of rain, a soft and steady pattering on the clay roof tiles above the borrowed pallet. The world is quiet. For a long moment, you simply lie there, feeling the coarse texture of the wool blanket against your chin, smelling the damp earth rising from the floorboards, and the lingering scent of last night's lamp oilless smoky, slightly rancid perfume that has seeped into your tunic. You do not move. You listen to the rhythm of the water, a sound without beginning or end, just a constant, gentle arrival. Your eyes trace the cracks in the whitewashed wall beside you, following their branching paths like the dry riverbeds you passed yesterday on the road. The cracks are safe and warm. The rain is safe and warm. There is no need to rise, but the habit of duty is a weight in your bones, heavier than the blanket. You sit up, the straw of the pallet rustling with a dry, insect-like whisper. The room is small, just a square of packed earth and timber, loaned by the village headman. Your travel chest sits open against the far wall, a dark rectangle of aged wood. From it, you retrieve your tools. First, the wax tablets, their wooden frames smooth and cool from the night air. You run your thumb over the surface, feeling the slight depressions of yesterday's calculations, a ghost of numbers under a thin skin of beeswax. Then the papyrus scroll, its edges slightly frayed, the dry, papery smell of it mixing with the damp. Finally, the abacus, its beads of polished oak clicking with a subdued, wooden music as you lift it. You lay them in a line on the small table. Tablet, scroll, abacus. This is your world, reduced and ordered. The world is quiet. Outside, the rain continues. You dress slowly, the linen of your undertunic catching on dry skin, the heavier woolen overtunic settling on your shoulders with a familiar, slightly scratchy embrace. You fasten the belt, adjusting the leather until it sits just so, neither too tight nor too loose. The ritual is the same every morning. You pour water from a clay jug into a basin, the liquid shockingly cold against your fingers. You splash your face, the chill a brief, sharp clarity that fades instantly into the room's soft gloom. You dry your hands on a rough cloth, feeling every fiber. There is a peace in these motions, a predictability that holds the larger uncertainties at bay. You sit at the table and light the olive oil lamp, though the gray morning light filters through the single parchment-covered window. The flame is a tiny, steady pupil of yellow, its heat negligible, its light a weak pool that falls across your hands. The smell of burning oil intensifies, a familiar companion. You take your stylus, its bronze tip worn smooth, and begin to smooth the wax on the first tablet. You heat the metal slightly over the flame, not to melt, but to warm, and then you draw it in slow, even passes across the surface. The wax softens, becomes liquid for a moment, and then cools into a fresh, blank, honey-colored plane. The motion is hypnotic. Back and forth, until all previous marks are gone, absorbed into a new uniformity. You do this for all 4 tablets. The task takes a long time. The rain provides a soft percussion to your silent labor. With a clean slate, you unroll the papyrus register. It crackles softly, a sound like distant fire. This is the imperial ledger for this village, last updated 7 years ago. The ink is faded, the Greek letters precise but belonging to a different time, a different season. You read the entries, your finger tracing the columns. Household names, measurements of land in modioi, assessments of olive groves and vineyards. You read of harvests that do not exist anymore, of trees that were cut for fuel 2 winters past, of fields that now grow only thistle and dust. The scent of the old ink is faint, a memory of vinegar and oak gall. You look from the scroll to the blank wax, and then to the abacus. You begin to transfer the first figure, sliding a bead across its wooden rod with a soft talk. 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 Each bead is a tiny weight, a physical manifestation of a number. The arithmetic is simple, a repetitive addition and subtraction, the multiplication of units by the tax rate. You lose yourself in the grain of the wood, the smooth journey of the beads, the slow filling of the wax with your own, newer scratches. The rain slows to a drizzle. Outside, you hear the distant, muffled sounds of the village waking. The low groan of a wooden door, the faint bleat of a goat, the repetitive thump-thump-thump of someone beating wet wool against a stone. These sounds are not interruptions. They are part of the texture of the morning, like the texture of the wax under your stylus. You pause, your hand cramped. You look at your work. The numbers align, then they do not. A discrepancy of 3 modioi in the eastern plot. You close your eyes. You can see the field from yesterday's survey, its boundary stone half sunken, the barley stunted and sparse. The register shows a fertile plot. Your survey shows a failing one. The difference is a handful of silver coins for the treasury, and a winter's worth of grain for a family whose name you do not know. You do not decide. You simply note the discrepancy on a separate slip of papyrus, a problem for later. You set it aside. The weight is administrative, a quiet, constant pressure in the room, like the atmospheric pressure before a storm. It does not shatter the peace. It is woven into it. You work until the light grows stronger, gray turning to pale yellow. The flame of the lamp becomes superfluous, and you pinch it out, a wisp of darker smoke curling up to join the shadows in the rafters. The smell of extinguished wick joins the smells of wax and damp wool and old paper. Your stomach murmurs, a distant internal sound. You will soon go to the headman's house for bread and olives. But for now, you sit. You watch a droplet of water form at the edge of the roof outside your window, gather weight, and fall. You count the beats between drops. 10 breaths. 12. The numbers in your head fade into the rhythm of the day beginning, a slow, predictable pulse. The world is quiet. You are here at a small table with your tools. The calculations will wait. The plea in the village elder's eyes from yesterday will wait. The imperial courier, still days away, will wait. All of it is held in the suspension of this gray, rainy morning, in the tactile reality of smoothed wax and wooden beads, and the soft, endless sound of water meeting earth. The soft light of the Anatolian dawn filtered through the thin, oiled parchment covering the single window of your borrowed room, casting a pale, diffused glow across the rough-hewn wooden floor. You stirred on the simple cot, the scratchy woolen blanket a familiar weight, the cool morning air carrying the faint, earthy scent of damp soil and distant wood smoke from hearths just beginning to stir. A faint, distant bleating of goats drifted from beyond the village walls. A tranquil, repetitive sound that merged with the rhythmic drip of water from the eaves after last night's brief, quiet shower, creating a gentle, sleep-inducing cadence. Your tunic, folded neatly on a wooden stool, still held the subtle, lingering aroma of dried ink and the faint, dusty sweetness of aged papyrus from the previous day's meticulous work. You rose slowly, your movements unhurried, stretching your weary back, the joints giving a soft, almost imperceptible creak. The cool stone floor beneath your bare feet offered a grounding chill, a tactile reminder of the solid earth beneath this temporary dwelling. You splashed your face with water from the clay pitcher, the cold liquid a mild shock that sharpened your senses just enough to prepare for the day's quiet duties. The water tasted faintly of the mountain spring from which it was drawn, a clean, mineral tang. The world outside remained largely quiet, save for the increasing chorus of sparrows chirping their morning greetings from the eaves, their tiny, insistent calls a soft counterpoint to the village's slow awakening. Outside, the air was crisp and cool, carrying the promise of a sun-drenched day. You walked towards the village square, your leather sandals making soft, scuffing sounds on the dusty path, each step a deliberate, unhurried motion. The market was already beginning to stir, a slow, gentle hum rising from the cobblestones. The air was thick with the mingled scents of freshly baked bread from the communal oven, its yeasty warmth a comforting presence, intermingling with the sharp, clean aroma of cut herbs and the subtle, musky scent of sheep-s wool. You passed a group of women, their fingers deftly working spindles, drawing out thin, consistent threads from fluffy tufts of raw wool. The repetitive, rhythmic whir of the spinning tops a soothing, almost hypnotic sound that spoke of ancient, enduring routines. Your destination was a shaded corner near the old communal well, a spot designated for your official duties as a tabularios, a middle-ranking tax assessor for the imperial treasury. You carefully unfurled your large, brittle papyrus scrolls, the dry paper rustling with a faint, papery sigh, revealing columns of meticulously recorded figures and names, some dating back several decades. Beside them, you laid out your smooth, rectangular wax tablets, still bearing the faint indentations of yesterday's calculations, and your small, unassuming abacus, its dark wooden frame worn smooth by countless journeys and countless fingers, its polished stone beads awaiting their quiet dance. The morning sun, now higher, warmed your back through your tunic, a comforting, steady heat. As the morning progressed, the market's gentle murmur grew, but never to a clamor. Farmers arrived, guiding their donkeys laden with baskets of sun-ripened figs and dusty grapes, the soft thud of baskets being set down, blending with the low, contented grunts of the animals. A potter, seated on a low stool, steadily turned his wheel, shaping damp, gray clay into elegant amphorae and sturdy bowls, his hands moving with an almost meditative grace, the wet squelch of the clay and the rhythmic shush of the wheel creating a quiet, absorbing soundtrack to his ancient craft. You watched, observing the easy, unhurried rhythm of the village, a world of repetitive, grounding tasks unfolding around you as you prepared for your own. Soon, the village elders approached, their faces etched with the sun and wind of the Anatolian plateau, their hands calloused from years of working the dry earth. They moved with a slow, deliberate dignity, their worn tunics rustling softly as they settled onto the low stone bench opposite your makeshift desk. Their low voices, speaking in a broken dialect of Greek, were filled with quiet pleas, their gestures subtle, indicating the parched fields you had surveyed the day before, the dwindling livestock, the harsh reality of a recent drought. You listened intently, though no words were exchanged in the conventional sense. Their quiet sorrow communicated through the slump of their shoulders, the weariness in their eyes, the slow, rhythmic sweep of their hands. Your task was to reconcile the meticulous figures on your ancient scrolls, the imperial Capnican registers, detailing land holdings and expected yields, with the stark, undeniable truth of the drought-stricken fields and the visible leanness of the community. Your stylus moved across the wax tablet, making soft, scratching sounds as you began to adjust the figures, transcribing new estimates based on your recent surveys, each mark a quiet, deliberate decision. The polished stone beads of your abacus clicked softly, a dry, precise sound as you tallied, subtracted, and verified, the mathematical processes unfolding with a methodical slowness that belied the immense weight of their implications. Each quiet click, each soft scratch, represented a family's winter stores, a child's next meal, the slender thread between subsistence and the chilling prospect of debt slavery. The sun climbed higher, casting longer shadows. The air grew warmer, carrying the faint, sweet scent of time crushed underfoot. The market activity began its slow decline, the villagers drifting back to their homes, their footsteps softening on the dusty paths. A distant dog barked once, a lonely, drawn-out sound, before silence reclaimed its hold. You continued your work, your focus unbroken, the rhythmic movements of your hands over the abacus beads a continuous, gentle hum. The old registers, crisp and unyielding, lay open beside the new, tentative calculations, a quiet testament to the enduring bureaucratic machinery of the empire, a silent dialogue between past expectation and present reality. As the afternoon waned, a gentle, almost imperceptible breeze rustled through the leaves of the ancient olive tree overhead, casting dancing patterns of light and shadow across your scrolls. The subtle coolness on your skin was a welcome sensation. You observed a lone figure, an old man, patiently mending a fishing net by the communal well, his gnarled fingers moving with practiced ease, weaving new twine into old, the soft snick of the needle through the knots a quiet, persistent sound. You felt the steady, administrative weight of your role, a deep, pervasive hum of responsibility that settled over you, not as a sudden burden, but as an ever-present, quiet companion. It was the weight of being the empire's financial nerve-ending, silently absorbing the realities of its furthest reaches, translating human struggle into cold, impartial figures. When the last of the day's light began to fade, casting long, purple shadows across the village, you gathered your tools, carefully rolling the papyrus scrolls, securing the wax tablets, and tucking the abacus into its leather pouch. You walked back to your borrowed room, the village now utterly quiet, save for the crickets beginning their nightly chorus, their tiny, insistent chirps filling the gathering dusk. The path was cool beneath your feet, the air growing heavy with the cool dampness of evening. The world was quiet, safe and warm within the confines of your temporary dwelling. Inside, by the flickering, golden glow of a small olive oil lamp, its faint, warm scent mingling with the lingering aromas of ink and dust, you meticulously reviewed your day's work. The quiet scratch of your stylus, the soft click of the abacus beads, filled the small room, each movement deliberate, each number re-verified. The anxiety you felt was not a pounding heart, but a subtle, pervasive hum beneath your skin, a quiet urgency to ensure absolute precision, for in these numbers lay the fragile balance of many lives. The smell of ink clung to your tunic, a persistent reminder of your silent, continuous vigil, ensuring that the empire's demands, however distant, acknowledged the quiet, enduring realities of this small, sleeping village. The world was quiet, and you were safe and warm, absorbed in the deep, slow rhythm of your calculations. The sun has reached its zenith over the Anatolian plateau, hanging like a heavy, golden coin in a sky bleached of its blue, and you find yourself seated upon a low, three-legged stool of weathered oak, the grain of the wood pressing firmly against your thighs through the coarse, sweat-dampened linen of your tunic. Before you, a simple trestle table has been arranged, its surface scarred by decades of use, and upon it lies the physical weight of the Empire's memory. The heavy, rolled cylinders of papyrus and the dark, fragrant slabs of the wax tablets. You inhale deeply, and the air is a thick tapestry of scents. The dry, alkaline tang of sun-scorched dust, the faint, metallic sharpness of the iron gall ink in its ceramic well, and the sweet, honeyed aroma of the beeswax that waits to be smoothed and rewritten. The world is quiet here, muffled by the immense heat that causes the horizon to shimmer in a slow, rhythmic pulse, and you feel the stillness of the earth settling into your very bones as you prepare for the afternoon's labors. You reach out a hand, your fingers moving with a practiced, deliberate slowness, and you touch the edge of the first scroll, feeling the fibrous texture of the papyrus, which is at once brittle and resilient under your calloused pads. There is a faint, papery rasp as you begin to unroll it, a sound like the dry leaves of autumn skittering across a stone floor, and you anchor the edges with two smooth, river-washed stones that feel cool and solid in your palms. Your eyes trace the columns of Greek script, the ink faded to a soft, charcoal gray, representing the lives and lands of a generation past, and you recognize the inherent stillness in these numbers, a frozen record of a time when the rains were perhaps more frequent and the soil more dark. You pick up your stylus, a slender rod of bronze with one pointed end and one flattened, spade-like end, and you feel the weight of it, balanced perfectly between your thumb and forefinger, a tool of absolute precision in a world of shifting dust. The task of the Kapnikin begins with the abacus, a rectangular frame of dark walnut that sits to your right, its bronze rods holding rows of polished bone beads that have been smoothed by the touch of 1,000 calculations. You begin to move the beads, and the sound is a rhythmic, percussive music, a series of soft, wooden clicks that echo the beating of a slow heart. Click, click, clack. You slide 3 beads upward to represent the hearths of the lower valley, their surfaces cool and slick against your skin. And then you move 2 more for the orchards that now stand skeletal and gray against the heat. There is no haste in your movements. Each slide of a bead is a meditation, a physical manifestation of a decimal, and you find a profound, drowsy comfort in the mathematical certainty of the frame. The beads do not lie. They simply exist in the positions you grant them, and as you work, the heavy atmosphere of the afternoon seems to thicken, wrapping around you like a warm, woolen cloak. In the distance, beyond the shade of the portico where you sit, the village continues its slow, repetitive dance of survival, a series of motions so ancient and steady that they seem to be part of the landscape itself. You watch for a long, unhurried moment. A woman sitting in the shadow of a sun-baked mud wall, her hands engaged in the endless cycle of spinning wool. You hear the low, hypnotic whir of the wooden spindle as it drops and spins, a sound like a distant honeybee lost in a field of clover. And you watch the raw, ivory fibers of the sheep-esque coat being drawn out by her steady fingers, twisted into a single, continuous thread. The motion is fluid and eternal, the reach, the twist, the spin, the wind, and it mirrors the way you draw the data from the dry fields and wind it into the columns of your ledger. The scent of the raw wool, oily and earthy, drifts toward you on a stray breeze, mingling with the scent of the dry thistles that line the village path, and you feel the immense administrative weight of the empire resting softly upon your shoulders, as heavy and familiar as a well-worn harness. You turn your attention back to the wax tablet, the surface of which is currently a chaotic landscape of previous notations, scratched into the dark substance. You take the flat end of your bronze stylus and begin the process of smoothing the wax, a task that requires a gentle, insistent pressure. As you press the bronze against the wax, you feel the resistance give way to a buttery softness, the warmth of the afternoon making the medium more pliable, and you watch as the old figures vanish, swallowed up by the dark, obsidian-like pool of the reset surface. The smell of the beeswax intensifies as it is disturbed, a rich, golden scent that fills your lungs and slows your pulse even further. You move the stylus in long, horizontal strokes, back and forth, until the tablet is a perfect, unblemished plain of dark stillness, ready to receive the truth of the drought-stricken acreage. The world is quiet, and the only reality is the friction between the bronze and the wax, a tactile conversation that anchors you to the present moment. Now, you must record the new figures, the ones that reflect the parched earth and the lowered yields of the central plateau. You dip your reed pen into the inkwell, hearing the tiny, liquid plop as the tip breaks the surface of the dark fluid, and you wait for a single heartbeat as the excess ink drips back into the jar. You begin to write upon the papyrus, and the sensation is one of exquisite friction. The reed tip catches slightly on the fibers of the plant, creating a minute vibration that travels up the length of the pen and into the joints of your hand. The ink flows in a controlled, steady stream, darkening the pale surface with the weight of imperial law, and you watch as the wet liquid glints in the sunlight for a few seconds before being absorbed into the thirsty paper. Each character is a slow construction of lines and curves. The alpha, the delta, the capoend you find yourself breathing in time with the strokes of your pen, a slow, rhythmic inhalation as you lift the nib, and a long, steady exhalation as you press it back down. As the afternoon shadows begin to lengthen, stretching like long, indigo fingers across the dusty square, you reach for the abacus once more to reconcile the final sum. The heat has begun to lose its sharp, biting edge, replaced by a soft, enveloping warmth that smells of cooling stone, and the first hints of evening wood smoke. You move the bone beads with a sense of profound closure, the click-clack sounding louder now in the deepening silence of the village. You realize that the figures you have recorded are more than just numbers. They are the steady pulse of the land, a record of endurance that matches the slow turning of the seasons. You feel a sense of quietude, a deep, internal stillness that comes from the completion of a repetitive, necessary task. The ink on your fingers has dried into a dark, intricate pattern, a map of your day's labor. And as you begin to roll the scrolls back into their protective cylinders, the sound of the parchment is like a final, soothing whisper. You are safe and warm in the cocoon of your office, the Empire's financial nerve-ending at rest. And as the light fades to a soft, dusty amber, you know that the world is quiet, the ledgers are balanced, and everything is exactly as it should be. The sun had long since dipped below the distant, hazy Anatolian hills, pulling the last vestiges of weary daylight from the vast, stretching plateau. You settled into the small, borrowed room, the rough-hewn stool a familiar presence beneath you, its worn surface smoothed by countless prior occupants, the air already cool with the quiet encroachment of the night. A faint, persistent smell of dried herbs, perhaps wild thyme or oregano, drifted from tiny cracks in the mud brick walls, mingling subtly with the deeper, more insistent aroma of wood smoke that clung stubbornly to the heavy wool of your tunic, a scent that had become your constant, understated companion on this long, slow circuit. Outside, the final, faint bleating of a single, stray goat faded into the encompassing silence, swallowed by the growing darkness, leaving only the soft, persistent murmur of the evening wind rustling the dry, brittle grasses just beyond the small, unglazed window opening. Your fingers, slightly stiff from the day's chill and the meticulous measuring of parched fields, reached slowly, deliberately, for the olive oil lamp, its clay base cool and smooth beneath your touch, its thin, braided wick already trimmed and ready, awaiting the gentle kiss of the flint. With a quiet, practiced flick, a small, hesitant spark caught, then bloomed into a tiny, fragile flame, pushing back the encroaching shadows from the immediate vicinity of your rough wooden table, casting a warm, flickering amber glow upon the stack of tightly rolled papyrus scrolls and the neatly arranged, dark wax tablets. The light was soft, imperfect, and utterly tranquil, yet it was enough. A quiet, steady beacon in the deepening quietude of the evening, and the vast, dark world outside began to shrink, gently, to the circumference of its gentle illumination, safe and warm within its delicate, luminous embrace. You carefully unrolled the first tightly bound papyrus scroll, the dry, brittle fibers whispering a faint, papery sigh as they yielded, slowly, patiently, to your guiding touch. The edges occasionally caught on the rough surface of the table, requiring a soft, almost imperceptible press from your thumb to smooth them flat, holding the ancient register open. The faint, sweet smell of old parchment, mixed with the acrid undertone of aged ink, rose gently from the surface, a familiar perfume that spoke of countless hours spent in quiet rooms, under similar lamplight, across generations of tabularios. Your gaze drifted over the columns of minuscule Greek script, the meticulously recorded figures for the cabinet, the land tax, from years long past, each stroke of the scribe's reed pen preserved in faded black upon the pale, fibrous sheet. Beside the scroll, you placed a fresh wax tablet, its dark surface smooth and cool, ready to receive the updated calculations. The stylus, carved from a slender piece of bone, felt familiar in your hand, its pointed end poised above the yielding wax. A faint, almost imperceptible scratching sound would soon fill the air, a quiet counterpoint to the distant, rhythmic chirping of crickets that had now begun their nightly chorus beyond the window. The air in the small room was still and heavy, carrying the faint, comforting scent of damp earth from the floor, a natural fragrance blending with the lingering traces of your own skin, warm and tired after the day's methodical trudging through the stubbled fields of this Anatolian village. Your fingers, accustomed to the delicate dance of numbers, then moved to the abacus, its wooden frame worn smooth by countless hands and countless calculations across generations of similar evenings. The small, polished beads, carved from dark cherry wood, felt cool and dense beneath your thumb as you gently nudged them into their starting positions. A soft, almost imperceptible click-clack echoing in the quiet room. A tiny, rhythmic sound that was instantly absorbed by the thick mud brick walls. Each bead represented a unit, a 10, 100, an intricate system of counting that transformed the abstract weight of imperial demand into tangible, movable objects. A silent conversation between your mind and the ancient instrument. The task was to reconcile the old registers with the harsh reality of the present, the drought-stricken fields that had yielded so little this season, the pleas of the village elders still echoing faintly in your memory, their broken Greek mixed with the quiet desperation in their eyes. You dipped the fine tip of your stylus into the small, ceramic inkwell, the black liquid cool and viscous, then carefully transferred a figure from the ancient papyrus to the wax tablet, a precise, unhurried movement. The faint, metallic tang of the ink wafted up, a sharp contrast to the earthy smells, as you etched the number into the soft wax, the act itself a tiny, permanent commitment. Each number, each calculation, was a thread in the vast, unseen tapestry of the empire's administration, a single, vital nerve ending in its sprawling financial body. The quiet weight of this responsibility settled upon your shoulders not as a sudden burden, but as a deep, ingrained presence, a constant companion that breathed with you, exhaled with you, through every meticulous, slow motion. The olive oil lamp flickered almost imperceptibly as you shifted your gaze between the faded ink of the old surveys and the fresh, sharp marks you made. The warmth of its small flame a steady presence against the growing chill of the night. The stillness of the room was absolute, broken only by the soft scrape of the stylus, the occasional faint rustle of papyrus, and the steady, quiet rhythm of your own breathing. You began to cross-reference, comparing the old land allocations with the new, carefully recorded measurements. The numbers, rows upon rows of them, seemed to swim gently in the soft lamplight, each one a tiny, silent testament to a field, a family, a harvest, a promise. The smell of ink and old paper clung persistently to your tunic, a subtle reminder of the administrative world you inhabited, a quiet, almost imperceptible anxiety that was simply part of the fabric of your existence. The calculations for the Capnican were not merely figures. They were the delicate balance between the survival of a family through the harsh winter and the crushing burden of debt slavery. A silent, profound power held in the steady movements of your hand, in the careful counting of each abacus bead. The evening deepened further, the sounds from the village outside having long since ceased, replaced by the soft, almost hypnotic drone of the crickets and the occasional distant hoot of an owl. You paused, stretching your fingers, feeling the rough texture of the wooden table against your palm, the subtle vibrations of the lamp's flame reaching through the solid material. The air had grown cooler, carrying a faint, fresh scent of distant rain that had not yet reached this parched land, a hopeful, elusive whisper. You picked up a small, smooth stone, worn round by a stream, that you kept on your table, turning it slowly in your fingers, feeling its cool, dense weight, a small, tangible anchor in the abstract sea of numbers. Then, with a quiet sigh that was more an exhalation of focus than weariness, you returned to the task, the methodical rhythm of calculation beginning anew. The world outside was quiet, the village asleep under the vast, star-strewn Anatolian sky. But here, in the small, borrowed room, under the gentle, unwavering light of the olive oil lamp, the silent work of the empire continued, slow and steady, one careful figure, one silent abacus bead, one meticulous calculation at a time. The warmth from the distant hearth in the main common room, a faint, comforting emanation, seemed to wrap around the edges of your quiet space, a tranquil assurance that the night, though long, was also safe and undeniably warm. You wake before dawn and the darkness around you feels neither threatening nor comforting. It simply exists, as darkness has existed in rooms like this for centuries before you arrived. The straw mattress beneath you has compressed during the night into a firm, uneven surface that supports your weight without particular care for your comfort. You can smell the dried grass and wheat chaff that fill the ticking, a scent so familiar now after 30 nights of similar rooms that it has become the smell of your work itself, inseparable from the papyrus and ink that define your days. You rise slowly, feeling the cool air of the room settle against your skin, where the woolen blanket falls away. Your tunic, draped over the room's single stool, carries the faint odor of lamp oil and the particular mustiness of old Impian Gaul mixed with gum Arabic. That has seeped into the fabric over weeks of close work. You dress without haste, pulling the garment over your head and feeling its weight distribute across your shoulders, the linen under tunic already slightly damp with the night's accumulated warmth. Your fingers work the leather belt through its bronze buckle with the automatic precision of ritual. And you are dressed, and the world is quiet. The olive oil lamp on the small table has burned itself out during the night, leaving only the ghost of smoke in the air. A thin thread of scent that mingles with the smell of the clay walls around you. You do not like it. Instead, you move to the narrow window where the first suggestion of dawn creates a difference between the sky and the mountains. Not light exactly, but an easing of the absolute dark. You stand there, your palms resting on the rough wooden sill, feeling the grain of the wood beneath your fingertips, and you breathe the cold air that flows down from the plateau, carrying with it the smell of distant juniper and the mineral scent of limestone dust. This is the final village of your circuit, and you know this only because you have counted the days and checked them against the itinerary that exists on a scroll you consulted so many times in the first week that you no longer need to unroll it. The knowledge sits in your mind like a stone in a pocket present, solid, unremarkable. Today you will complete the final calculations, reconcile the final figures, prepare the final summary that will travel back to the provincial capital, and then, in time, to Constantinople itself, where men you will never meet will transfer your numbers into larger ledgers that feed into still larger systems of accounting that stretch across the empire like roots beneath ancient trees. You return to the table and strike the flint, coaxing a spark into the twist of linen char cloth, then touching it to the oil lamp's wick. The flame catches and grows, casting its small circle of yellow light across the table's surface. The wax tablets are stacked to your left, their wooden frames smooth from hand. The wax surfaces marked with yesterday's preliminary calculation scratches, and numerals that you made with the bronze stylus that now lies beside them, cool and heavy when you pick it up. The papyrus scrolls are arranged to your right, each one tied with its identifying cord, each one containing the official land register for a village whose name you can pronounce, but whose history you will never fully know. You open the final scroll, unrolling it with both hands, feeling the papyrus crackle softly as the fibers flex. The writing is in a clerk's careful hand, executed perhaps 5 years ago, perhaps 10, listing plots and measurements in the standardized units that allow the empire to convert earth and wheat and olive trees into the abstract language of taxation. You place small stones at the corners to hold the scroll flat, and you begin to read, though reading is perhaps not the correct word for what you do. You absorb the information, your eyes moving along the columns while your mind automatically calculates, compares, adjusts for the realities you witnessed yesterday when you walked the fields with the village elder. The abacus sits before you, its wooden frame dark with age and oil from countless hands. You slide the beads along their bronze wires, the soft clicking sound creating a rhythm that fills the quiet room. Each movement of your fingers corresponds to a plot of land, to rows of wheat that grew or did not grow, to olive trees that bore fruit or stood barren in the drought that has persisted for 3 seasons. You work without hurry, because hurry would only breed error, and error in these calculations means families who cannot pay, land that passes to creditors, children who enter service to discharge their parents' debts. The morning light strengthens gradually at the window, shifting from gray to pale gold, and you continue your work, safe and warm in this barred room. You hear, distantly, the sounds of the village waking, a dog's bark, the scrape of a door, the low murmur of voices that do not reach you as words, but only as the general music of human activity beginning its daily cycle. These sounds do not distract you. They are simply the texture of the morning, as much a part of your workspace as the smell of the lamp oil or the feel of the stylus in your hand. You write the final figures on a fresh sheet of papyrus, forming each numeral with careful strokes, the reed pen scratching softly, the ink flowing in its controlled way from the bronze nib. The numbers arrange themselves in their columns, and they are correct, and they are complete, and your work here is finished. You set down the pen and flex your fingers, feeling the slight stiffness that comes from sustained precision. The world is correct, and you are done. Deep away from the bronze nib. The numbers arrange themselves in their columns, and they are correct, and they are complete, and your work here is finished. You set down the pen and lean back in your high-backed wooden chair, the carvings of vines and leaves pressing comfortably into your back. The hearth across the room glows softly, its warmth reaching out to you, inviting you to relax. Outside, the full moon casts a silvery light through the leaded glass window, illuminating the quiet village square below. The distant hoot of an owl and the gentle rustle of leaves in the breeze are the only sounds that break the stillness. You close your eyes, taking a deep breath, the scent of parchment and ink mingling with the faint smell of wood smoke. Your mind drifts, the day's work complete, and you allow yourself to be lulled into a peaceful slumber, the quiet hum of the night wrapping around you like a soft, warm blanket. In your dreams, you find yourself in a sunlit meadow, the grass soft beneath your feet. A gentle breeze carries the sweet scent of wildflowers, and the distant murmur of a brook soothes your mind. Butterflies dance in the air, their wings like stained glass in the sunlight, and you feel a deep sense of tranquility wash over you. This is a place of rest, and you let the serenity of the meadow fill your soul as you sink deeper into your chair, your breath slowing, your body relaxing. The world outside may be full of noise and chaos, but here, in this moment, there is only calm, only quiet, only the gentle embrace of a well-earned